Welcome back to America Decides. There's been lots of back and forth between President Trump and Ukrainian President Zelenskyy the last week. A lot of words, but those words and whatever they have meant or didn't mean or how they hurt or didn't hurt did not prevent the two sides from hashing out what appears to be a deal that the Ukrainian leader will come to the White House to sign Friday about U.S. access to rare earth minerals in Ukraine. I want to talk to our CBS News national security contributor, Sam Vinograd, about this and a lot of other things that came up in the lengthy cabinet meeting press conference with the president. So what do you think is the importance, after all the rhetoric back and forth, of working out this arrangement, which appears to be signed, sealed, and practically delivered?
Well, this arrangement fundamentally redefines how U.S. security assistance will be provided, at least during the Trump term. The United States has not typically provided foreign aid and then issued a tab to the recipient country because security assistance has been viewed as being given as part of achieving U.S. national security interests. What's clear is President Trump doesn't view Ukraine's sovereignty as a core U.S. national security interest, which is why he's asking for repayment. So as we look at the deal with Ukraine, I think it also begs a question of going forward, what else is the Trump administration going to expect from recipients of security assistance in exchange for the United States providing weapons, dollars, training, and more? The
president was asked if, in conversations yet to be had with Russian President Vladimir Putin, if he would have to make any concessions in reaching a peace settlement with Ukraine. The president said he would not go into them. He was asked if he would describe them. Here was part of his response.
What concessions would you like to see?
Oh, I don't want to tell right now, but I can tell you that NATO you can forget about. I think that's probably the reason the whole thing started.
So that's not a Russian concession. That's taking something the Ukrainians themselves have acknowledged would be hard to achieve under the current set of circumstances. But that's a concession up front that freezes out one thing the Ukrainians would at least like to have on the table. So if they pull it back, at least they get something in exchange.
Sure, and the obvious thing would be Russia withdrawing from key swaths of Ukrainian territory or pledging not to violate Ukraine's sovereignty again. However, history is a guide here. Russia did sign ceasefire agreements, the Minsk Accords, with Ukraine, dating back several years now.
Not once, but twice.
Twice they signed accords, and twice they violated them. So even if Russia does make concessions as part of a negotiation, and that's a big if, the verifiability of what they're pledging is going to be really critical. And that's why when President Macron was here earlier this week, he said a deal had to be not just signed, sealed, and delivered, but actually verified based upon Russia's history.
And with absolute security guarantees for Ukraine backed up by the United States and Europe. Speaking of Europe, here's what the president said about the formation of the European Union. I'd like your comments on the other side.
The European Union's it was formed in order to screw the United States. I mean, look, let's be honest. The European Union was formed in order to screw the United States. That's the purpose of it. And they've done a good job of it, but now I'm president.
Well, Sam?
Analytically speaking, Major, the EU was not formed to, quote, screw the United States. President Trump has taken great issue with the fact that the EU, for example, on trade-related matters, acts as a bloc.
Right.
President Trump is quite transactional in how, for example...
He prefers one-to-one deals,
he does.
Not a bloc.
Personality-based, transactional approaches, bilateral trade agreements, and particularly when it comes to trade-related matters. I think he would be more optimistic about and would prefer more to negotiate directly with Germany or France versus having to deal with the bloc in its entirety.
And I want to take two things together. The harsh comments at times from President Trump about NATO, this very harsh assessment of what the EU was formed. This is deepening the sense of, if not crisis, anxiety in Europe about its future relationship with this administration.
And that's why we're seeing so many European leaders make the trek to Washington. We have the British Prime Minister coming tomorrow with a Trump-y agenda. The British Prime Minister announced earlier this week that the UK will be raising defense spending to 2.5% by 2027, and that they'll be cutting foreign assistance in order to pay for more defense spending. That sounds a lot like what President Trump is doing here at home from a foreign assistance perspective. And of course, he's called for European countries to shoulder more of the military spending and defense burden globally.
And I'll quote the White House, that's the Trump effect. That's what they say. I'm not saying it's true or not,
It
but
looks like
that's
it's
what
working.
they say.
Yeah.
Sam Vinograd, thank you for your perspective.